Where on earth can you find a home that is the only one in the nation that is made almost entirely out of bones? We'll take you there next on Ghost Towns and More. In a remote section of southeastern Wyoming lies a river and nearby mountains where Native Americans used to frequent to find just the right wood materials to make bows and arrows. Anything that was useful or good, according to Native tradition, was called good medicine, and the name carried over to the river and mountain from the good medicine and the bows that were made there. Thus, the name for the nearby mountains and river became Medicine Bow. The flatlands of the area were untamed, only frequented by explorers, travelers, trappers, and herdsmen until the Union Pacific Railroad began construction through the area in 1868. The nearby Medicine Bow River created an excellent way station and supply point for trains that would soon be passing through. And a new settlement, Medicine Bow, was established just 57 miles northwest of Laramie.
The railroad came in around 1868, and they brought people in, and they also had cavalry. There was actually more cavalry than there were citizens, but they all worked for the railroad, and then they found the coal, and of course we had the water because of the river, the Medicine Bow River, and that's how it started.
Medicine Bow became the main supply point for the area. By 1869, a cavalry of soldiers were garrisoned there to afford protection to suppliers, cattlemen, and new settlers in the area who endured frequent attacks from the Native Americans. Unlike other westward mining towns where gold fever drew mining prospectors overnight, Medicine Bow grew gradually, but never became very large. Still, its importance as a supply station and shipping point for the railroad kept the town economy stable for many years. By 1870, the population consisted of just 35 civilians, 65 soldiers, with most civilians employed by the railroad. Stockyards were built to contain as many as 2,000 cattle per day, being shipped eastward and to other states such as Montana and Idaho.
This was the biggest place to bring your cattle to take back east to sell. And they had a lot of cattle lords out here. And they would bring on the average of 2,000 head a day and ship them out and take them back east to sell.
By 1880, the population had increased to only 54 people, 15 of whom were railroad employees, and by 1890 the population swelled to almost double. Sheep were adding to a substantial wool production industry, with 1,000 tons of wool being shipped annually.
They would ship out on the average of 10,000 ton wool back east to make clothes.
With Medicine Bow becoming a very busy place, the untamed Wild West soon brought the problems of lawlessness into the area. Robberies of the trains, Gunfights, saloon brawls, and holdups at the mercantile store in town were commonplace, with one old-timer claiming that there was a killing in Medicine Bow every month of the year. Along with that, Native Americans came in the area and were known for stealing cattle and horses.
A lot of hoodlums. There was one part of time that there was on the average of one person shot on the average a month. And there was lots of robbers. There was lots of good people and bad people.
The country surrounding Medicine Bow was described as remaining in its virgin state, and there was no semblance of civil law except in larger towns further east. It was rough country. In 1899, the famous novelist Owen Wister came into town and spent several weeks in Medicine Bow looking for good ideas for his new novel called The Virginian, which was to be published in 1902. He wanted to get to know the cowboys and lifestyle in the untamed West, and his book that included adventures in Medicine Bow brought considerable notoriety to the town.
Owen Wister, he wrote the book The Virginian, and when he published it in 1902, it was so popular that he had to publish it 4 more times that same year. It was, they kind of say, almost as good as the Bible back then. So it was very, very popular. And in 1913, when the Lincoln Highway came through, that's when the people started coming because they wanted to see the Medicine Bow and what the big old attraction was with the cowboys and the Indians.
In 1909, the railroad transferred ownership of the town and it became incorporated. With the Lincoln Highway coming through town just a few years later, the town grew to a few hundred in population. In 1911, the first mayor, August Grimm, and his partner, George Plummer, built the famous centerpiece of the town, a large new hotel named after the popular novel by Wister, The Virginian. This amazing hotel was elegantly decorated, and the rooms today remain much the same way they did many decades ago. Being situated on the Lincoln Highway, this grand building was a favorite for travelers and at the time was considered one of the finest in the state. Inside the hotel are a Western-style saloon, kitchen, cafe, and a more formal dining room on the first floor. There are 33 rooms, and the Virginian has been serving travelers for more than 100 years, hosting weddings, celebrations, and other functions. This is a must-see when stopping by. The winter of 1916 through 1917 turned out to be one of the fiercest ever known in the area. The snows became so deep that passenger trains could not get through, leaving passengers and railroad employees stranded in Medicine Bow. In such times as these, the food supplies for stranded people dwindled rapidly down to zero. Even with rotary railroad plows, the high sides of the snow would simply cave in on the tracks. The snowstorms were so bad that livestock all over the state perished in the storms, causing devastating losses to farmers and ranchers. It was a long time before the snows could be cleared so passengers could be on their way again and needed supplies to arrive. On the evening of November 18, 1919, a passenger train was held up and robbed at Medicine Bow by an escaped convict, William Carlisle, from the Wyoming State Penitentiary, where he was serving time for train robberies in his past. While he was making his escape, a passenger shot him in the hand as he disappeared into the night. A manhunt was organized, and Carlisle was eventually found at a nearby ranch where he was being treated for the wound in his hand. After he was apprehended, he was returned to the penitentiary where he served some years before being released. This time he decided to comply with the law. He married and went on to live an honest and respectable life, showing that some people can turn over a new leaf. Medicine Bow continued to be a vital stopping point for travelers along the Lincoln Highway until Interstate 80 was built during the 1970s and tourism was diverted away from the town. By this time, the population was at 455 people, and by 1981, the train depot was closed.
In the 1950s, they stopped doing the passenger train, and the only thing that started up was keeping it going was coal, and we had the uranium mines out north. We even had some salt mines out north of here that they used for Epsom salts, and that was the only thing that was keeping this town going.
Today, the Union Pacific Railroad trains frequently thunder by the town of Medicine Bow each day and night with vast amounts of freight cars and no longer stop. But the charm of the town has remained with intriguing things to see. Just 7 miles east of town is one of the most unique structures in the United States, a home built almost entirely of bones, dinosaur bones. Built in 1932, homesteaders Thomas and Grace Boylan collected dinosaur bones from the local region, then decided to build a house out of them. Called the Fossil Cabin, there are an estimated 5,796 bones used in the construction. It served as a roadside attraction on the Lincoln Highway and also served as a gasoline station until the late 1960s. As of this date, there are plans underway to relocate the Fossil Cabin to the town of Medicine Bow. When visiting the town, the Medicine Bow Museum is housed in the old train depot that is full of relics and antiques from the bygone era, with a railroad caboose sitting nearby. The old cemetery is located just across the tracks to the south, east up on a hill where one can see an ideal view of the town. There is much to see and appreciate in the quiet and sleepy semi-ghost town of Medicine Bow.